All right. Welcome to New Home Life Podcast with Michelle Mumoli. And I want to introduce everyone to Moira Sedgewick, who is the interior designer, brains, founder, seriously, seemingly awesome person. I just recently met you via email and now in Zoom time of a chalet collective and the Sedgewick Chalet. Welcome, Moira. Thank you for being on the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And in real life, I have a 32-inch snowstorm happening outside my Poconos window. But in Zoom life, you can't really tell.
It creates a little bit more light, right?
And it's sort of like a blue light that bounces off. Like it's making, this wall has not been painted yet. I just purchased this property in November, and it's making this like beigey white seem a little bit more blue, which I'm very into.
Yes, I like it too, because I recently painted this wall, but it can look a little, my lighting is a little bit more like incandescent. So I have no light on, just like the little, that little light clip that you put on the laptop. But I like the snow, but I think like this is too much.
Oh, well, if you don't have to go anywhere, it's so fitting that it's Groundhog Day and that we are now forced to stay inside as we're like really in this tail end of the pandemic. What we hope is the tail end anyway. And it's just, compounding everything. It feels like Groundhog Day, and it is.
Really? Yeah, it does. It does, because it feels like yesterday, today.
Yep. Yeah. Getting all those groundhog vibes, if you will.
I wanted to start a Jersey City Groundhog Day because there is a hill in between Hoboken and Jersey City Heights where there's high groundhog activity. And I thought it would be great to have like a little Groundhog Day right around there where you don't maybe you don't have to like wrestle the groundhog or anything, but maybe you just wait for the groundhog to like come out.
Fun facts. And you don't know which groundhog you're going to get.
No, it could be any.
It could be Phil.
It could be Phil.
Could be Will.
I was thinking of Jersey City Jimmy.
Oh, I love Jimmy. He's a great character. He's really roadside a lot,
Yeah, yeah. And, he understands that sometimes he wants us to hear what we want to hear.
Yeah, cousin to Jersey City Joe.
Yes.
Wouldn't discriminate. I'd have any of them today.
I think Jersey City Joe has like a neighboring, whatever you call that, little hole in the ground. I don't know what you call it. Trench. I don't know if that's what they mean.
There's a word. There's like a den.
Oh, a den. Yes. Probably a den. So tell me more about your experience and how you came about with the Chalet Collective. I'm intrigued by it, really.
Oh, great. So I'm so happy to hear that you're intrigued. And it really all started about 6 or 7 years ago. No, 8 years ago, rather. I purchased a home in the Poconos, a cute little gingerbread house. You can follow us on Instagram. It's Sedgewick_chalet. And that's where you can see said gingerbread house. And that really started my real estate journey, design journey, hosting journey, all of the journeys. But really it started there. And I knew right away that this house was special and magical and that it would allow me to connect to others. But I think I wanted, even at that time, I knew I wanted to have more properties and to build more community. And I wasn't even thinking about having more chalets in just the Poconos. I was thinking that the Chalet Collective could form a whole community and it didn't have to be, relegated to any sort of district or state. And it could be in Maine, it could be in Cape Cod, it could be in Jersey City. It's just an idea of community and a collective where we're hosting together, we're serving folks with hospitality. And really, I think at the core of it, it's a way to serve the community and meet other people through hospitality.
That's really cool. So I became aware of these Pocono vacation communities recently. Probably, actually, most likely it was about a year ago that we were thinking about investing in a little vacation cottage as well, predominantly because we have a really large family and the space that we were living in wasn't big enough to host everybody. And I thought you could have a great space to meet and like reserve it for yourselves during the holiday season with like 20 people. And then in the off season when you're not using it, rent it out. There's so many water parks out there and ski resorts and stuff like that. And then the pandemic hit and it never happened. Or has yet to happen. But my real estate photographer is actually an owner as well out there. I think he owns in Pond Lake.
There's so many out here.
And there's like a ton.
What's crazy is I'm centrally located. I'm in Pocono Pines, and you can go an hour north and it's still the Poconos. You can go an hour south and it's still the Poconos. So it's really big. And the beauty of it is it's close to New York City. It's close to Philly. It's about equidistant between the two. And then if you're from DC, it's really only 4 hours. So we get a lot of the different cities along the Mid-Atlantic.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So what is your implementation of the design process, and how do you go about connecting with, is it other people that own property, these little chalets or log cabin-ish type?
Yeah, and actually where we are called a chalet collective, but we do everything. We have properties in Maine, like a little lost cabin in Portland, Maine. We have a little Cape house in Cape Cod, and a townhouse in Baltimore, and a potential one coming to Jersey City.
Oh, wow.
So I think, we're not limited by type of home. It really is a mentality of a collective. And I am one owner, and in the collective, there are other owners. And those owners might need full design help. They also might need help setting up their short-term rental. And with the Chalet Collective, we can provide all of that and then market that together in one package.
That's awesome. Do you do any of these services a la carte outside of the collective?
Exactly. Yes.
Sweet. Very cool. So when did this all start for you? When did you build this passion?
Really great question. It's funny because my background is in hospitality and in food and wine, and I always knew I wanted to have a bed and breakfast. And then when Airbnb came along, it really fit what I could do, because you could host remotely and you could set up a home and not have to be there, but still deliver all of those beautiful design touches that I've always wanted to do. So I think this started back then when I wanted to have my own B&B. And as long as I could remember, I've always loved design and hospitality and food and wine, and finding an intersect that makes that all come to life has been really special and important. And even when I was in high school, I remember talking to my aunt, who was most influential in my life at large, but she was working for a very well-known fancy restaurant in Boston. And I was like, do I go into design? Do I go into food? And she's like, don't do food. You'll get so burnt out. She's like, I know, because I work with all these restaurateurs, and she's an artist as well. So she was like, go the design route. Like, you could just connect to yourself a little bit more. But I chose to go the food route. So I always wanted to tap into design. And then I started to do food and wine events, and there was a whole design aspect of that. So finally, when I purchased my first property and setting that up, doing the full complete design and really tapping into the period of the home, it was built in the 60s. So I knew that the majority of the look and feel there was going to be of that era, right, and really finding different pieces that communicated that, but also with modern touches to really communicate hospitality. And I would say that that was my kickoff and how I try to conceptualize what I'm offering to clients. Like, what is it that you want to communicate with your home? And what is it that you want if you're going to be there? And how can we bridge that all together?
That's great. That's great, because sometimes I think as a person who uses Airbnb, not often, but a couple times a year, when we travel, the furniture, it has become that the furniture and the aesthetic of the place does value the place a little more, but it actually makes you want to go there. It makes you, it's an attractive component of saying, wow, that's, and, this typical style home, or, A-frame type home. And it has these awesome, mid-century appliances, and not mid-century furniture, and like new appliances and things like that, make it look really cool, versus a home that just has like the leather sofa and what leather sofa I'm talking about. It's
sure do. Yeah. And I think it's about communicating that personality. And for me, I like to connect to the home and be true to what's happening within the walls of that house. So the Baltimore house has a different feel than the Pocono home versus the one in Portland versus the one on Cape Cod, but
Right.
They all have their own uniqueness and story to tell. So how can we tap into that and really provide a story and an experience and what we're putting for design? And then obviously what's paramount to all of this is hospitality and comfort. So ensuring that whatever it is you want when you're here, it is here for you. And you are in a comfortable space that you want for nothing.
That's great. We stayed at a very, very small Cape May home in West Cape May last summer with my pod of people, and there were no utensils. There was there was one knife, and it was like a watermelon knife, and one really small cutting board, and and a pizza cutter. And, we cut lobsters up with those two implements, and we made it work. But when we look for a place to rent, we have to make sure that it says that it has utensils.
Yeah.
Which is
that's hysterical. And I was having this conversation yesterday. A colleague of mine was doing a staycation in New York City just to get out of her home, and the heat went out and she couldn't reach the owner. So she left and, was at a loss. And people just don't address things properly. And I think that's what we want to achieve, is working with different owners to help them level up their game. And as you asked earlier, do we do a la carte services? Yes. So maybe you do have the design part down, but you're not really clear on what to provide from a hospitality perspective. Like someone who's been through hotels and restaurants, like I can give you that perspective so you can have utensils. And, we do a full complete checklist of what's going to be in the kitchen. And really the idea is that you can be at one of our homes and cook a full meal. Maybe it's Thanksgiving, whatever that is. I want to make sure that you have everything there that you need. Right. So not having utensils, maybe they need to call me. I don't know, pass along my phone number.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to, because we have like post-traumatic vacation syndrome from that.
Yeah.
Did you check the utensils? What did it say on the listing?
Yeah.
It's really crazy, but it is necessary. Yeah. It's sort of like you want to walk into a place and stay there. Most times you are not just renting for a couple of days, you're renting for an entire week with several people and children. And so, it's like, what are you providing for that person, for all of those people to be comfortable?
Exactly. And when people don't understand that, they probably just need to either stay there or have an outside perspective. And I do invite guests to give that feedback to folks. I mean, you're already done with the transaction at that point. And if you're coming from a place of community and wanting to help them improve for future guests, just let them know how that affected you.
It's true. That's very true. Although sometimes, feedback isn't seen as a positive when you give a lot of those hosts. When you give that feedback, it's like, oh no, we don't want that to show up because we don't want a negative review. And then we're going to review you negatively as a guest.
Okay. And one of my tactics is I ask people directly. I tell them how I'm going to review them. And, 9 times out of 10, it's 5 stars. So I communicate that and I let them know that I'm going to give them a really positive 5-star review. And I ask for the same. If you disagree and don't think that we deserve that, please tell me here so I can address it with you and have a conversation. Because once it's in a review, I can't really converse with you. So I invite conversations offline. I mean, in the app is fine. I just would prefer to talk it out with you.
Right. Which is also
something put it in the review ever. You can tell there's a private section. You can go back to your chat. you can always address it without putting them on blast.
True. I appreciate that. I appreciate you for doing that as an Airbnb host.
Yeah. It's
And
helpful.
for communicating, because a lot of people don't, or they may be out of town people, or they may have a management company that's dealing with it. And, they just they're not present, or they're not aware. It's just kind of like, they're just looking at the numbers coming in and saying like, oh, we made this much money this year.
Right. And that's, not what a company like a Chalet Collective is about, because we want it to be about community.
Yes.
And we achieve that through cultivating relationships and having conversations. And I really think if you are able to talk about whatever the issue is, it can be solved. People can walk away with a different understanding. I recently had a guest who was very surprised that we had a written agreement. And he's like, I've never encountered this. And he just felt uncomfortable. And then I explained why we're doing it. And it was literally to ensure an environment that he could come into that our neighbors would be comfortable with. Like, we as hosts have multiple stakeholders. Guests are, of course, very important to us. But again, going back to the idea of community, literally our neighbors are important as well.
I love the story. I feel like I want to now experience a Chalet Collective. And I don't know if I've ever come across, I feel like I've never come across any of your properties that were available when I needed to, to rent them out. But now I'm going to seek it out.
Yeah. And I would say that, Airbnb is just one platform. It's one way to reach us. We do a lot of direct bookings with our email list. You can sign up on our website to get updates, or you can find us on Instagram. A lot of people DM us and we can work out an agreement there. So Airbnb isn't the only way to get a booking. Also, if you want to communicate with guests directly, Instagram, I find, is very helpful for that. You can reach a lot of people on that platform.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I think that I follow you now on Instagram. If I haven't, I will.
Amazing. And if you do find us on Airbnb, the Sedgewick Chalet or the Patterson Park House in Baltimore, if you can give us a heart, that actually helps us as hosts and helps us reach better algorithm juju. We'll just say it that way.
Okay, will do. And if you're listening and watching out there, you guys do the same.
Yeah, thank you.
So what are your plans for this coming year? What has 2020 been like for you during a time of COVID? Because I know a lot of rentals ended up going to monthly. A lot of people ended up getting out of the city and wanting to go out west and out further east.
Yep. We experienced that, and we had a lot of monthly rentals. At the start of COVID, we hosted a lovely family from New York City for about 3 months. And that really set the tone for how we were going to service folks throughout COVID. And, first and foremost was making sure we had a constant toilet paper supply. So I'm going to give a shout out to the toilet paper subscriptions out there. Who gives a crap is who we use. In beautiful paper. They're individually wrapped and they look so nice. The name is hysterical, but the paper itself is so punchy and poppy. It really fits with our brand. And it's recycled bamboo paper, a mix of recycled and bamboo. And it's affordable. So that was, the top priority was making sure that our guests had toilet paper. And then it was just interesting because we had been used to a cadence where people would rent out for a month or a week, or not a month, a week or a weekend. And we could come to the property in between, assess it, make sure it's clean, do any seasonal touches. But it was interesting when we had month-long and 3-month-long renters, we didn't have access to the property. And we had a time when the seasons were transitioning and we would have normally gone up during the week and set up all the outdoor furniture. So we had to accommodate for that in this new era of just the house being filled with guests, which was lovely. So, those were some interesting challenges, just, planning for the seasonal changes. Like, this is very funny and logistical, but we have to make sure the outdoor furniture is as beautiful as the indoor furniture. Right. So typically it goes through a beating when it's wintertime. As we can see right now, if I looked out my window, it's insane. So every start of the warm season, we repaint the outdoor furniture and assess the chairs and make sure it looks good. And then, do all the maintenance pieces that we usually do. So, setting that up while guests were there was an added challenge, and making sure we had the landscapers come and all of those things. But I think what was great about this past summer was that folks were understanding, and we came in and did all those different things, made sure people had a wonderful experience. And it was lovely to have guests who were there living, because they really took an ownership of the house, which was so lovely. And I think we had a very important regular dialogue with them about what was going on at the house and what we could do for them. And it was great. It was a wonderful experience. And I would welcome month-long guests, especially as we have transitioned to a lot of working from home, as maybe it's a permanent fixture.
Right.
These houses are set up for that now. Like, we have large dining areas that were converted into desks and workstations, and made sure that the Wi-Fi was upgraded so that everyone could take their Zoom calls all at once, because the house can sleep 10. So we want to make sure all 10 people can be on Zoom when they need to be. So we were just making sure that those things were happening on the back end, and making sure we're designing places. Like, an interesting thing that happened in the pandemic was my Baltimore property was being designed with all of this work at home in mind. And we designed it with working from home and being at home. And it really helped us set up zones a little bit differently, like knowing that you can't just work in one space and then expect to dine in that space. So we were creating little nooks as, ways to have smaller offices and places that you could tuck away, and just giving people different options to be in different areas so that they can feel like they are having some choice in workspace. So that became a new design element that we looked at during the pandemic.
That's great. I think, those upgrades are really, really integral, because there are so many people that are deciding to, also the work culture has changed a little bit, where it's like, I'm on vacation, but I will be, sporadically available, but it's like, but I still need that Wi-Fi, because I'm going to check my email at, every day at 6 p.m. I remember I was in Santorini one time, and I was like, I'm going to check my email at 7 p.m. because it's like 7 a.m. and I would have gotten caught up, or, whatever the time difference was. I'm catching up from the day back there of the day before. So it was like, but I was on vacation,
Yeah.
I wish that wasn't the case, but that's how it is.
We were just talking about that here. So we want to make sure that our guests, even if they are staying for just the weekend, that they have those capabilities. I know in my personal life, I have regular happy hours with my friends so I can see them. I have my aunt that I mentioned earlier. She actually lives in Madrid. So I want to be able to have those, Zoom calls with her, or just the FaceTime, and not have a failed Wi-Fi situation so I can talk to her.
Right.
And there was one client we worked with in Portland, Maine, that had a weak Wi-Fi. And thankfully, she understood it and really got on top of the local company to do whatever they could. But then it unearthed this whole thing that Maine is the worst state for internet.
Yes, I agree with you. I've been a couple times. My husband is originally from Maine, and he has family in Bangor, and we actually celebrated his dad's marriage up in Bar Harbor. And it is very difficult. You could be on one block and have really great Wi-Fi, and then walk over to the next block and you're like, nothing.
Yeah. So dealing with that is interesting. And, we were there living in the space and ultimately worked with the owner, and working on those pieces. It's a challenge, because you as a host want to do the most that you can to ensure your guests are taken care of, but you can only go so far if the internet provider can't give you a higher service.
Right.
So yeah, those things do happen.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what are your plans for this year? What are you cooking up? I know you said you have something in Jersey City. You probably can't spill all the beans on that.
Yeah. I mean, I am hoping that something in the Paulus Hook area comes together. There's just been a change in the neighborhood of apartments emptying out, people's, living situations changing, wanting to maybe pop into the city for a meeting or two, and not necessarily staying there long term. And, we don't know how long this trend will be, but I think we're going to play around with that a little bit in Jersey City and see what we can work with. But really, that's the theme of 2021, is taking on new properties and new clients and people who want to either hand off their properties to have someone design and manage them, or people that just, want to level up from a hospitality perspective. So I think this year it's about growing our portfolio in different markets.
Are you open to discussing what those types of management fees look like for someone who might be willing to, who might be interested in reaching out to you, or are just kind of dabbling in? Because most management companies usually charge like 5 to 10%, really, depending on what they're managing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And for short-term rentals, we typically end up at 15% because it's more of an ongoing management. Whereas if you're looking at traditional real estate and doing property management for long-term rentals, you don't have as much interaction. But with short-term rentals, you're looking at multiple guests in a week because, in a market where you have people coming and going, like Baltimore's a great example, Jersey City's a great example, you have guests coming in that maybe are just staying the night.
Right.
So, that requires scheduling the cleaners, scheduling the inspector, ensuring that there's an audit happening regularly so that all of your consumables and your linens are up to par. So it has a higher touch than long-term rentals. So we do about 15% of, what the overall rental fee is. And we do anything from, studio apartments up to 10 bedrooms if you have a large vacation property. You might not have that in Jersey City or Baltimore, but if we're talking about spaces in Maine, spaces in Poconos, the Catskills or Cape Cod, you might have a larger property. And I think there's a volume discount when it comes to bedrooms. But something that we tell folks as an earmark is just to design and outfit a medium, not a medium, but like somewhere in between like medium to high end, somewhere in that spectrum, to outfit an apartment with all the suitable amenities and furniture. It's about 10 to 12,000 for a 1-bedroom. And that's just talking about the contents. And then there's the design fee on top of that. And with our design fee, we make sure we're also setting you up with everything you need on the back end for Airbnb. So we're setting up your listing, we're training your cleaners, we're setting up your house manual, we're setting up your turnover manual, like all the systems that you need to run your property, we set that up for you. So ideally, we take on clients that need everything, wall-to-wall furnishings, the whole design concept, and we can further that down the line by setting up a whole hospitality system and program for them, and then managing as they have guests coming in.
That's fantastic. That's basically like, I bought the place, here, Moira, you do the rest.
Yeah, and we have a client that did that, and it's been incredible to work with them. They're ideal client because they're very hands-off in that sense and trusting. But of course, we have that initial conversation that I talked about at the beginning, which was like, what is it that you want to see? What is the level of hospitality you want to provide? And truly, as a business owner, I'm looking to see that the client wants to align with what I'm offering. And if someone is more of like the heads and beds person, that might not be the best fit for me because I care a lot about hospitality. I care how the experience is. And then we see that in our returns. We see return guests, we see people telling their friends, and just the feedback that we have of being something that stands out in the marketplace.
That is great. I love that. I really do love that, because that is that's how you get repeat business. That's how you get lifelong business from anyone,
Exactly. Yeah. It's really standing true to our brand. So we want to make sure that our clients want to be part of that. And they don't just want, any sort of bedding. We're really particular that we get, high-end cotton sheets. We don't do microfiber for a lot of reasons. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for your plumbing. On just a very micro level, it's not good for your washer machine, or if you have a septic system, it's not good for any of those things. So we work with them and guide them on pieces that we recommend. And like I said, the ideal client lets us do all of these decisions, and they're on board because they trust us. And we've had that initial conversation.
Awesome. 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 So, are you looking to expand out a little bit further south, further west in the future?
Yeah, great question. I think we're open to anything. And we have a car, we will travel. We have a team in place that does training. So we have had success in remote work. We've had success in local work. So it really is about what the client needs and if we are a right fit for them at the end of the day.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm going to put up Moira's info under her. I can't go into her screen, but under her screen. Moira, thank you so much for being on New Home Life and talking to me about what you do and the Sedgewick Chalet and the Chalet Collective. I hope that we get to stay at one of your places and maybe I'll be calling you for business in the future.
Absolutely. We're here. We also do real estate staging. So, if you need something big or small, organizing, but either way, come and find us, stay at one of our homes, and we'll connect with you.
Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Moira.